Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Hello everybody, we're back from our various travels. This week, Noel and I recorded an episode on the banks of Ullswater, just because it was a really nice evening and we fancied some fish and chips. So that episode will probably be coming out next week. And in that episode, we talk about our respective trips up to Norway for Noel and down to the Alps 2 up for me and the current Mrs. Barber. Both trips very enjoyable. Before we get into this week's episode, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. It's not long now till ABR. And I made the promise, I think you may have seen it on Instagram. First 20 people I see wearing a TAMP podcast t-shirt will get a free TAMP podcast buff and some stickers. Obviously, there's something in it for me because there's 17,000 people will see you wearing a TAMP podcast t-shirt. So it's not complete, me being really kind. There's evil motives behind all of my behaviour. Another thing is, we've lost a few Patreons recently. The Patreon stuff is great because it helps me pay all of the costs. Otherwise, I'm out of pocket. If you've got a spare £3 a month, I think that's all it's set at, then please join up to Patreon. That is really helpful and makes doing this podcast a little bit more affordable. And then finally, before we get into the details of this week's episode, I just wanted to mention that we are still planning the 2026 Adventure Motorbike Film Festival, which is going to be held in our hometown of Kendal. So have a look at the website for that, Adventure Moto Film Fest. I don't know, something along those lines. We've added a little bit more detail in there this week, so have a look at that. Right, so I am delighted to announce this week we are joined by two of our friends from the Overland Guide Association, Kelvin and JP, and they're going to tell us all about the Overland Guide Association and how you can get involved. Right, let's get on with it. I think we're good to go. It's a shame we can't see your gorgeous furry face, but
I've had a shave.
I'm very, very grateful that you've joined us. It's very much appreciated, and I think it's something that our listenership will be very interested in. I've met a lot of people recently at the last couple of events that I've been to that are associated with the Overland Guide Association, or the OGA. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome three friends to today's podcast. Noel is currently in Norway. By the time this is published, you may have seen some footage with him and a certain Mr. Hansen enjoying the fjords. I'm delighted to say Simon Josie from the Real Riders podcast has joined us to fill in and give us the Noel vibes this week.
Well, thanks for inviting me on.
The other two friends are Kelvin Ski and JP Dixon, both of whom are representing the Overland Guide Association, which is the subject matter of today's podcast. Massive thanks to joining us both. JP, do you want to tell us who you are, a little bit about your history with motorcycling and guiding?
My name's John Paul, short for JP. It's like going back to being a kid again because I've gone back to doing the whole going out playing outside with my mates on bikes. Nothing's changed at all. My background is I've got 35 years in the adventure industry. Most of my life I've been riding motorbikes either on a local farm field or eventually on trails and then overland, etc. I like to ride KTMs predominantly at the moment, although I'm open to any bike. I'm not really fussed about the size of the engine or the bike as long as I get to use it and have a bit of fun with it. My involvement, I'm probably the co-founder for the Overland Guide Association. So I've been training this subject matter for 10 years secretly. We've been pretty secret about it. We've been hiding in the shadows, working as a little secret ninja bitch behind the back, behind all these companies to help basically get them ready for insurances and get them ready for their expedition to make sure that their best practices are in place.
Kelvin Ski, who I've just spent a weekend riding with at the excellent Taffy Dakar. Tell us who you are and a little bit about your history.
Yeah, good event. So I'm Kelvin Ski. I ride a Gas ES 700, which is just a 690 in a red dress. I've been involved in the OGA since around 2018. I've ridden around UK, Europe, Eastern Europe, a little bit of Thailand, Himalayas, stuff like that. I got involved with the OGA because I'd been riding as a leader and had people fall off and I didn't know what to do.
You've done a bit of mountain biking as well, haven't you?
I have, yeah. So I've moved over to lazy mountain biking, as some people say, and it's e-mountain biking. So I am a qualified mountain bike leader, mountain bike teacher, because it's a bit like exploring the trails that we no longer can.
JP, tell us a little bit more about these expeditions you've been doing for the last 35 years. Presumably it's not just motorcycle stuff. You've worked in various different fields, haven't you?
Yeah, I went down the traditional outdoor pursuits instructor route. However, I sort of sidestepped across to working specifically with people with impairments. So that includes individuals who are ex-service, individuals who are injured, people with learning disability, people with physical disabilities. And rather than just working in an outdoor centre, which is great, it wasn't cerebrally challenging for me. So I specialised in taking people away who fundamentally might be, it's not accessible to those individuals to go to normal outdoor provisions. I initially worked within the Social Service and Health Authority, and we were teaching rock climbing, canoeing, climbing, kayaking, rafting, all the usual activities. And as a result of that, it evolved into greater expeditions. So we've run dog sledding expeditions in Canada and Alaska. And that's with individuals who've got learning disabilities, multi-day trips on the snow, including camping in yurts, etc., or hot tents, to sailing across the Mediterranean and bits of the Atlantic with people with severe epilepsy, working with ex-servicemen who's lost limbs, who might have PTSD as well, so significant mental health problems, and we take them to do a range of activities from hiking in the Pyrenees, winter mountaineering in Alaska, to go in the pub down the road. Fundamentally, I think outdoor education, as we all know, gives us more than just general exercise. And I really enjoy the idea of using the adventure world, our playground, to help grow individuals and challenge them and build resilience and promote good mental health. And not only physical development, but that camaraderie and that resilience, so that you can actually get on with your real life. And I think that's where the outdoor pursuits excels. So some of the other expeditions, we snowshoed across the Algonquin range in Canada with 6 people who are visually impaired, which is quite entertaining when you start off, how to figure out how to take 6 people who are visually impaired in snow up to your waist. So we're there in chaining sort of process where we're holding ski sticks to the next person, and we work like a chain through and stay in overnight in hot tents and snow holes, etc. People with epilepsy who have got severe epilepsy, who potentially could die from it because it's a type of seizure that doesn't disappear, doesn't go, it doesn't stop automatically. And we've taken them scuba diving, quite shallow, but still scuba diving. We've taken them across oceans. And obviously the risk management associated to that is pretty challenging. You know, it's not just the normal expedition development of, oh, how much kit can we carry? It's like, what drugs do we need? What happens if it goes wrong? How do we evac these individuals? How do we safely manage them through an airport when they've got Tourette's, for example? That's quite entertaining as well. How do you get someone with Tourette's through an airport and make sure that they all get to the other side? Because, as you can imagine, that impulse control to say that word that you're not allowed to say always manifests. So building policies, procedures, protocols to make sure that stuff happens is what really gets me excited. And hence why the OGA is a simple manifestation from that experience to give me the opportunity to feed some of that back into this industry.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Mental Health Motorbike is a free mental health first aid support charity for the motorbike community throughout the UK. We exist to create meaningful and purposeful opportunities for all bikers so that together we can grow the well-being of the biker community. We do this through one-to-one and peer support, events, training activities and projects, working in partnership with the industry, organisations and clubs. When life gets tough, we are here to support, to listen, to ride, to get some support. You can find more information at mhmotorbike.com. Are you a fan of the thought, if you don't try, you'll never find out if you can? Then you will love Sam Manicom's 4 motorcycle travel books. With just 3 months' experience on a motorcycle, Sam arrived at the edge of the Sahara, aiming to ride the length of Africa. This dramatic 1-year journey turned into an 8-year adventure around the world. starting with Into Africa. With the word pictures that bring good travel books to life, Sam's 4- and 5-star rated books take you riding and exploring with him, and then Birgit too, through each section of the journey. With laughter, at times tears, and frequently with pure awe, Sam shares just what it's like to travel the world. In the gritty bits, you'll feel the grit. You can order signed copies directly from Sam on sam-manicom.com, or you can buy copies from your local bookshop or Amazon. The 4 books, Into Africa, Under Asian Skies, Distant Suns, which is South America, and Tortillas to Totem, which covers his journeys through Mexico and North America. The 4 books are also available on Kindle and as audiobooks from Spotify, iTunes, and Audible. So when did motorbikes, at some point there was a seed that I need to do more with my passion, which is motorcycles.
As a kid, I always rode motorcycles. There was always a motorcycle on the local farmer's yard, which we could always use. So I've always ridden across fields, and I really enjoyed that. Over the years, my health started to wane a wee bit.
So can I just stop you there? The local farmer kept a motorbike on his land that you could go and ride.
We hung around with all the kids who owned the farms, so we used to all share bikes, and no one actually knew who owned the bike. It definitely wasn't stolen, though, because in those days, nobody stole bikes. It was just a DT125 that was just left there, and it was ripped apart, headlights missing, goat or a sheep skull sellotaped to the front of the light to make it look cool, and we would just razz around the fields. Surprisingly how quick that sort of builds certain skills. Eventually I got into a bit of trials riding, and then over the years one of my friends lost his left arm and left leg in front of me on a motorcycle accident, and that put a stop to it for me, and I got a car, went into the adventure industry, and then just decided one day I'm going to buy another 125 and go trail riding with the wife because she's never done it. That was it.
And what was your journey to the
690 in a red dress?
You didn't just pass your test and jump on a 700cc rocket ship, did you?
Yeah, kind of did. No, I didn't. But some people did tell me I was foolish. I started motorcycling relatively late in life. Maybe when I was 30, something like that. First bike was an old Kawasaki 600, GPX 600 probably. Did road bikes for a couple of years and then went out and bought my dream bike. Really, really lucky to get the dream bike. The KTM 640 Adventure.
Classic. You never sold it. You've still got it in an air-conditioned room somewhere. Yeah, you haven't, have you?
Definitely not. No, I did sell it.
Bits used to fall off it as you rode up the road.
You know, it was a great bike, but it was far too tall for me. And that was my first foray into trail riding. And when I sold it, it had around 50,000 miles on it, something like that. It's high 40s, low 50s. I sold that after having it for probably 8 years to buy an AJP PR7. I had a KDX 200 in between. I need to backtrack a little bit because I've forgotten the little-known Suzuki Freewind. So it was Suzuki's very brief foray into, I don't know how, like commuter DRZ. So it was a DRZ with more plastics. I think actually I had that before I bought the 640. So I had that, got a little taste of trail riding. And that then made me do a shopping list. And it was like, right, well, if you're going to get a bike that you can go anywhere on, you want something that's carb, not fuel injection. You want a big fuel tank, good suspension. And the 640 ticks those boxes, doesn't it? I like oddball vehicles. So I like the Freewind and like the PR7. But I had some issues with the PR7. That lasted a couple of years. And somebody pointed out that the ES 700 was available, and I like the idea of getting a 690 that's not a 690, something slightly different.
What sort of riding do you do now?
I do as little tarmac as possible. It's all green linen, really.
What is the Overland Guide Association? What does it do?
So the Overland Guide Association is a professional body that represents motorcycle guides. And the aim of the game is it's a trade association that develops standards and best practice. It's fundamentally a secret club for all these guides to get decent learning, decent training, and support with all their business needs.
So who are these guides then? What sort of people are you training up, and what sort of organisations do they work for?
So we do work with some of the household names and brands, but we work with individuals rather than companies. We will train people who've been working as motorcycle guides for years, just come through, had lots of experience, but want to get some support, some reassurance, and some training. And we'll also work with people who want to set up. They see that trail guide can be a great fun job to do. So they'll come and do one of our courses and see what they need to do it to a good standard.
How did you spot that need? What made you think we need to do something like this?
Initially, when I was acting as a secret squirrel and helping these organisations, the aim of that contact was to help them meet business needs. Fundamentally, they needed some first aid training, some understanding about liability and how to prepare all the paperwork, etc., to fundamentally meet their duty of care. The OGA manifested over a period of time, and that small amount of training as a consultant for myself going into some well-known companies, I can name a few, although we're very careful about who we name, because we'll always leave someone out. Sweetland was probably one of our early adopters, and they were really keen to get behind what we offered. I supplied loads of training for them through my company, which is Empower Activity Services. This enabled us to bring all the knowledge that we've nicked from all the other industry, all the other adventure industry that we know has been tested in court, and apply it to their needs. So, for example, their guides sits very easily within a raft guide qualification, a mountain bike guide qualification, and a mountain leader qualification. We've tailored that information and tailored that training specifically to the motorcycle industry using that best practice and those skills. We're not making anything up. We've literally done what most of us do and learn off everyone else.
So if somebody goes through one of your training courses, and we'll come on to the different levels of training and what's included in the training, is there some kind of certification at the end of it?
Yeah, and it's an industry recognised qualification because it's not going through Ofqual at the moment. It is on our targets, one of our targets, to potentially register it within the Ofqual processes. However, the course has grown significantly. As you come on the qualification, you will get a fully recognised remote first aid qualification that is tailored specifically to motorcycle adventures. Now, that also qualifies you to receive your first aid at work certificate, which is an 18-hour qualification, and the course that we run far exceeds the health and safety executives minimum standards within that. And then you'll also get a guides qualification. That guides qualification is ratified through the OGA. And there is a chain of competencies that link back to other qualified guides in various other industries that proves that those competencies are robust. And that's what gives it its credibility.
What are the dangers then? If I decide tomorrow I'm going to start advertising TAMP tours, and we're just going to go in the Lake District to start off with, and I start selling TAMP tours, it's a fantastic place to ride. They're not expensive compared to some others. What type of liabilities am I actually setting myself up for if the shit does hit the fan?
A lot. And I suppose the recent case of the paddleboard company, even though grown adults can make the decision to go and do something exciting and dangerous, you can still be held accountable for any significant injuries or fatalities that happen within that you are not immune to litigation. Especially being in this country, we sort of have this idea that, it's a grown-up job, it's a man's trip, it doesn't apply to us. That particular litigation has definitely rubber-stamped the fact that, yes, you are legally bound to follow a set of principles. And obviously the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 clearly states that. And I hate to be the geek who states that, but it does. And it's well written into law. And it's not just a bunch of us lot coming up with these new ideas. It exists in every other industry. And I think the key element was in that court case with the stand-up paddleboarder, she was addressed for having this knowledge in a similar field. She's an ex-police officer. So she knew about health and safety regulations. She knew about training. She knew about insurances. She knew about the requirement for briefs, etc. She didn't use it. She didn't use any of that knowledge. And that's what we see or have seen in the motorcycle industry, that people are sort of trying to avoid those health and safety requirements that they do in every other day jobs. They don't want to apply it to their activity, which they have maybe seen as a fun activity. And you step from having fun to work. That's the shift.
Is it something that if I start taking money off people, then that's sort of the cut-off point? Because often people will get in touch and they'll go, can you show me around the Lake District for the day, Clive? Yeah, of course I can. What's the difference between me taking somebody, a friend or somebody I've met at a festival or something around the Lake District, to that paddleboard lady?
There's an implied contract. When it's you and your friends, you still have those risks. And if you'd had some training, you would avoid those risks as best you can. And it's not until you've had the training that you realise that you didn't know those risks existed. Essentially, if you're out with a group of friends, the risks are there. Thankfully, we don't live in another country where we're quite as open to no win, no fee, where there's blame, there's a claim. And so it's unlikely that a friend's going to claim against you. If there's an element of reward for it, then there's definitely a contract that's implied. It doesn't have to be a verbal contract or a written contract. It's implied. And so you're offering a service for reward then. I guess that's the definition of professional, isn't it? If you are paid to provide a service, you're considered a professional.
And the difficult is when you have benefit in kind, where someone buys you lunch or buys you fuel, that sometimes can fall into the role of some form of exchange, and that can force a duty of care onto you. I think the law is relatively sound in the sense that just because you're better at something and you go out with your mate and he buys you lunch and you buy his lunch next time, they're not going to come after you for that. I think the chances of that are very, very low. I think it's next to impossible unless you're a professional in it and you just happen to be out with your mates and they buy you lunch. They might then claim that you are in employment or commissioned. But I think ultimately, as soon as cash is exchanged and there's an advertisement and there's an agreement that I'm going to provide you a service, then the law of tort very much sort of clicks in.
The good news is when I ride with Noel, he never buys lunch anyway, so he'll be there with his flask and his sandwiches at the side of the road in a lay-by while we all sit in the cafeteria.
Does he ever fall off, or does he ever get lost because of you?
There was a long period of time when Noel annoyingly never fell off, and he's had 2 quite nasty accidents recently, which is great.
Didn't he hurt his ankle on one of the trips to Scotland?
Yeah, he broke a bone in his foot on a Gas 700.
That's the boots.
It's on video, yeah, he did have shit boots on, and he was also following a camera showing off.
It's all captured on video.
So some of the stuff that we've done in relation to helping to shape the industry, we started to collect anecdotal evidence as a research process on lower leg injuries following motorcycle accidents. All the forums, as soon as someone falls off and hurt themselves, I rig them up or send them a list of questions for them to fill in. And it was interesting, out of the 206, I think was the last one, 206 lower leg injuries and fractures and soft tissue damage, 99% of those injuries were all in adventure boots. So that starts to shape what we do. So when we're working with the guides, we start to say, look, you're going away, you're going miles away from anywhere. The risk of a lower leg injury, especially as the bike gets heavier or the speed increases, you want to avoid that. So in the kit list, we're starting to see stipulations for you need motocross boots, or at least boots with 3 or 4 clasps rather than just 2 clasps and a bit of Velcro, because that's also an indication of how rigid they are.
Can any person in the UK just decide tomorrow that they want to set up a guiding business? Are there any?
Yes.
So there's no limitations, restrictions?
There's not. When I'm trying to explain the OGA to somebody that's not really familiar with it, I'm like, in other activities, you could go out with your friends, your loved ones, and go and do an adventurous activity, and there would be an awarding body or an overseeing body that says the person you're going to be with has shown a level of competence. And we don't have that. Or we didn't have that. And so that's where the OGA can come in and be like, right, okay, so if you're going to go out with this guide, they've done a course with the OGA, they've got a level of competence. They've got some first aid training, they've got some incident managing. And so, yeah, because it didn't exist before.
You mentioned Ofqual, was it? You don't have that certification or recognition. I'm not quite sure what the right word is here. What is preventing that at the moment? Is it just a time thing that you have to go through a certain process? Are there certain things that you're, as an organisation, not yet achieving, which necessary to get that?
It's actually a choice, because if you register a course with Ofqual, that course can't change. It can't evolve quickly and effectively. What's unique about the courses that we run is once you've completed the course, you are part of the fraternity, you're part of the faculty. You're able to contribute to best practice. You start to build new ideas. That means the networking within the organisation is at the cutting edge of the development, because whether I'm working in the Sahara and I pick up an idea going, oh, that's new. I didn't think that. That's a good idea. I can change that immediately. If we embed it with an organization like Ofqual, those shifts and change will mean a significant change within the course. Fundamentally, that might mean that the course is different on each occasion. However, once you've done one course with us and you've completed your qualification, you're allowed to attend any other course for free for the rest of your life, as long as it's an open course. You've always got the opportunity to get CPD. All the new information, all the new ideas we share through a forum, and you can attend and contribute. You can attend completely and sit in on the whole course right from the start and finish as though you're a paid customer, and you get it for free. So that gives you the opportunity.
What's CPD?
Continuous professional development, which is unique. And I think that's the hard bit to do, because you go away, you do a course, you go, yeah, that was amazing. And then 2 weeks later, you forgot it.
Earlier, you were mentioning the secret society, and you were indicating that there was a certain amount of secrecy around your activities. Can you just explain that to us?
So I worked as a consultant as a result of helping one company achieve their goals very successfully. You sort of sign a covenant to a degree that you're not going to advertise what you've done. And as a result of it, that you then get handed around within the industry. Oh, this guy will do this for you. And then so you sort of get handed around. And I was doing that for about 5 years, keeping myself below the radar because I was a consultant. I was working for those individual companies. And what I realized was there was a lot of these companies are very closed off. They don't want to share their practices. I get it, because some of them have got very unique selling points and very unique approaches. However, I was then training all of them to do the same stuff. So they're all delivering the same provision ultimately, and the same safety and the same plan and the same brief. So I decided, right, it's time. We need to come out of the dark, set it up as an organization, start building a really strong network of all these companies we've worked with. And a lot of them are very big. And when I say companies, there might be 10 or 15 guides within each company. And that enables us to train the individuals, but the company then is very robust. It also means that those guides can jump to other companies within the network because they know they're trained, they know they're qualified and they're certified. So that's what happened. We came out of the shadows, made it public. I think we're just at the tipping point now where people are starting to recognize us, but we're not pushing. We don't want to push this on anybody.
And what has the reaction from those companies been to you guys coming out of the shadows, as you say?
They were all up for it. Obviously, I consulted them initially and said, this is my plan. This is what I'd like to do. This will give you a network of other guides, potentially. I won't share your personal USP because obviously that's not fair. However, what you will get is eventually a rubber stamp that would say this is an industry standard of best practice. And I think they're quite keen for that now. We're starting to do that slowly.
That's a really, really good phrase, is best practice. That's what it's about. The Overland Guide Association, it is about best practice. It's not about putting formalities and things in place. That they all exist already. It's just knowing that everyone's working to a good standard.
Everybody is welcome to apply to come on a course. You don't have any restriction about who can do it, or do you vet people before they come on the course?
Whenever you apply to join one of the courses, it says that you are not guaranteed a place on this course. Registration your interest in it, and then one of the committee will follow that up with a phone call to see what their expectations are and what their character is, because being a good guide is a lot to do with character, isn't it?
Especially when you're dealing with people.
You've got to like people, which is a really weird thing to say. But if you're stuck with somebody for a month, they've got all the little quirks that wind their wife up, it's going to wind you up. There's no guarantee about it. So you've got to love people enough to tolerate them and have that sort of drive to help them and help them overcome and get that adventure spirit.
In your opinion, do you think you can teach, being able to like people, or is that a fundamental trait of someone that either they have it or they don't?
You can be an absolutely amazing, out-of-this-world rider, but be a terrible guide. You've got to be a people person. That's one of the things that we do monitor on the OGA, is that if somebody starts making waves that are not quite right, and we start hearing things like, I've been out with such and such, and this happened and that happened and that happened. And it's like, well, there's got to be a conversation, because if we're setting best practice and saying that everybody's a good guy, we can't have those people representing the OGA.
When you talk about those negative things that you hear, are there a handful of sort of common things that you hear about, or is it quite diverse?
I think we do vet them out at the training, and there is levels of tolerance of others. I think that's a key point to emphasize. If you can put up with people for a couple of days, then you might only do weekend activities with people. You might only go trail riding or going on a road trip to Scotland or the NC 500 for 2 or 3 days. And after that, your social battery's worn out. And we help you to identify that. And if we can help you identify that, then we'll say to you, look, if you can't put up with people for longer than that, you do not want to run trips for a week or 2 weeks in the Pyrenees, because you'll end up pissing people off. And if you piss them off, then you ruin your reputation. And even worse, you'll make a poor decision that will put them at risk. And that's something that is key. We build that. And in the next level of courses, so we have multiple levels, we talk strongly about resilience and understanding how we cope under stress. And that's quite difficult to work out. Can you teach it? I think that's the question. You can teach resilience. The military have been doing it for a long time. The downside is that sort of resilience training doesn't always pull out the nicest of persons in high stress situations. It pulls out a very strong individual, unless you can build a camaraderie. Once you've got that camaraderie, say, for example, in a military setting, you can go through any experience in any situation. You could come out laughing and joking about it, even though it's horrendous. We do train resilience. We teach it as part of the advanced level course at level 3 and above, and we work on that principle. We teach you coping strategies and techniques that have been used when you're working with difficult clients, that we've extracted from working with difficult children, working with people with learning disabilities. We've extracted all that knowledge, that social skill knowledge that I've done in other industries, and we've provided it. So you'll learn how to deal with a client who's pulling wheelies when you've told him not to. You'll learn how to deal with a client who's always late in the morning and won't get his kit on. He's the last person. You say 9 o'clock on the bike, and at 9:45 he's still packing his bags. You'll learn how to deal with that. We'll go through those processes and teach you the best way to do it. So yes, you can learn niceness, but fundamentally, if it winds you up, you're going to hate your job. You're going to hate it. And that's not good, is it? We want to enjoy it. That conversation we have, we ring up, it's a chat, but often that chat lasts 1 or 2 hours with the individual, because we start to pull out all their interests, their aspirations, their hopes. And we can tell pretty quick how affable they are and how good at communicating. It doesn't mean that would say no. And you can get deferred on the course, and you can fail the course. There's definitely that, and many people have been deferred, but there's a robust system to support you through that so that you can build the skills. The odd occasion, we've booted somebody out for poor customer care of the OGA. We've excommunicated them, so to speak, because their professional performance wasn't acceptable.
I wanted to explore a little bit more about the actual courses themselves. I know the most recent courses you've run are the level 2 course, and you run those over 4 days. So, and they sound fantastic because they're very, very practical. Lots of hands-on stuff. You go out riding. How many people do you get on them? Tell us a little bit more about how the teaching works.
There is level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 courses. Level 1 is an aspirant guide or someone who's working in a set location under the supervision of a level 2. That could be someone, say, for example, working in a certain area, like, for example, Hags Bank. They've got lots of level 1 guides, and that enables them to work in a designated set of trails on an event. And those trails are vetted by a level 2 guide, and they will oversee the route selection, the pre-check, and who's going on it in relation to skill and any medical conditions. Level 2 is a full commercial guide. They can operate anywhere in the world where there is an ambulance service, where there's emergency services, which is a pretty large area. That course lasts 4 days. If you are not up to standard on that course, you can achieve a level 1 as a result of it, which basically puts you into a mentor role that you have to then be supervised by a level 2. If you don't have one in your organization, you can access one within the OGA, or you could then go away and get a bit more experience, a bit more practice with your skill set, and then come back and get reassessed, and then you can go up to level 2. If you fail the level 1, you are completely deferred and you're sent away. Now, you can sit on any course for free for up to a year to get your skills and knowledge up to the level you needed. After that 1 year, you fail to pass the standard, you're then asked to repay for another course. The whole point is you shouldn't mess it up unless you're just absent and you just don't bother doing any study and you bugger off and do something. You'll definitely get through if you take up the support network that's there. The level 3 is a guide that operates in countries where there is no emergency service. So, for example, Morocco. A Moroccan trip would mean that any significant injury would require quite advanced medical skills. And that might come as a shock to a lot of people because they go, I go to Morocco all the time. It's dead easy. There is no real ambulance service in Morocco. A van might turn up, but they're definitely not trained as medics. They have no clue. They're just van drivers most of the time, or they're doing patient transfer. So it might look like an ambulance on a good day, but most of the time it's just two guys in a white van. Having the ability to make decent decisions and plan those routes according and consider medical conditions, because let's be brutally honest, our age group is over 40 and overweight predominantly. I'm going to get shot for saying that, aren't I? That's our demographic, isn't it?
Nobody here's disagreeing with you, apart from Kelvin, possibly.
I'm definitely over 40. Maybe not overweight yet.
So you can imagine taking a group of people who might have heart conditions, who might be on blood thinners, who might be on various medications and pre-existing conditions into those environments, and then, unfortunately, either having a medical emergency or a trauma. That whole course is aimed at quite advanced decision making. And then the level 4 qualification is taking those individuals to countries or locations where there is very limited medical provision. The nearest hospital is greater than 5 hours emergency leg it to. You're looking at 13-hour, 2-day evacuations for someone who's injured. And the reason why it's based around those decisions is because health and safety demands that we adapt our activities to meet the needs of the worst case scenario, because our training is not about an easy day going out trail riding. It's about the worst fucking day you've ever had, where someone gets hurt, then someone else gets hurt, then someone gets ill. We need to prepare you and make you resilient enough to plan and prepare and be able to deal with that. That's the outline of those courses. There is a level 5, which when you get all those qualifications, you can then set up your own organisation, and that will probably be tailored for overseas, for international members outside the UK.
You're right in what you were saying about it's very hands-on training. There's no PowerPoint. It's all practical and it's all sort of scenario-led and scenario-driven. You'll get your training and then we'll put you in a position that's really quite uncomfortable, because that's the best way of learning these sorts of skills, is to be stress tested, isn't it? You've got to get your hands on, get your fingers inside that wound, get the group organised, get your customers managed and cared for. And if you can do it under stressful training, you're going to find it easier on the day when it goes wrong.
I'll just reference the Olimoto 2 first aid podcasts. I tend to relaunch them once a year just to give people a refresher really in first aid, because obviously he's a pretty highly qualified paramedic and he did exactly those kind of scenarios. Right, your mate's just ended up in a hedge. This is what's going on. What do you do?
They were good podcasts.
Yeah, good fun doing them as well. I miss Olimoto. We've mentioned first aid. We've mentioned managing people. What are the other topics that are included in the level 1 and the level 2 training, which probably most of us won't go beyond?
There is an element on the law and how that fits in with your legal responsibilities. There is an element on duty of care, so surpassing the legal requirements and making sure that you keep happy customers. There is an element on the British standards associating to tour operators. Individuals who are running a tour operating company can apply and use those standards to make sure they will not fall foul of the courts. There is an element on route planning and selection and planning routes all together, everything from single day to month-long trips to self-guided elements. There is a element on how to deal with difficult clients. There is understanding UK access law, because that's quite prevalent, especially for the lot of level 1 and level 2 guides. There is elements on leadership styles and processes and techniques. There's also a level about how to position yourself for being of your most usefulness in a trip. So, for example, either you lead from the front or the middle or the back, how the dynamics of those individuals will change over the course of of a journey, and there is probably the most important element is the ability to assess a rider's capability. So fundamentally, we all get it wrong when someone asks us how good we are on a bike. We either egg it down or egg it up. We very rarely say what's true. Either we don't know, which is possible, because you've got a thing called Dunning-Kruger, and that's that cognitive bias ideology. Yeah, I've done a bit, I've got it, I'm awesome. But in reality, we've developed a process to look at somebody, analyse their movement, and that's been done over the last 10 years of watching and being involved with also motorcycle coaching. We've identified.
We can summarise the Dunning-Kruger effect as if you're too stupid to even know that you're stupid. It's in the news quite a lot recently for a certain American leader.
You get enough knowledge to push you into Mount Stupid. I know everything about it because I've done a day trail riding or I've ridden a bike down to Cornwall. And then you're in Mount Stupid. You never felt as good as you have then. And you never will, to be honest. That elation, that euphoric feeling is a dopamine response. It's designed to get you to keep doing it. That's why we evolve. And then all of a sudden you start falling off, or you start realizing that the guy that you've not ridden with who come out is really good and you can't keep up with him. And then you drop into the valley of despair. And then you suddenly hate your bike and hate your boots and find all these problems with everything and slowly crawl out of it. And then you get better as you go. And I think we see that in all riders. And we go through and we analyse ourselves and figure out where we are and recall the time when we're in these positions. Having a physical analytical tool that tells you this person will fall off at this location, most likely because they ride in this certain position, is the most effective way of analysing their competency.
On the back of that, we will give you some top tips and advice and training on how to change the shape of the day for the customer without them even realising.
Based on their riding standards.
Based on your ongoing assessment of their ability throughout the day.
Yeah, so you're not throwing them down some Welsh mountain that they're not capable of riding on, right?
No, which is fine if you're out with your friends, to a degree.
In fact, it's the law. You need to throw your friends down Welsh mountains.
As long as you get a photograph before you help them back up.
Have you ever been out with a group of riders and you hate it? Or you hate yourself, you're just not riding properly?
Do you know what I have? And I'm thinking about some of the rider briefings I've had when I've gone on trips, and those always intrigue me because that kind of, you know what sort of a week or a weekend you're going to be in for based on the rider briefing. Some stuff that's really bugged me in the past is people that ride right on your ass. It's like, it's not a race. We're just following this guy, enjoying the scenery, being in beautiful Morocco.
That's the difficult bit. And I think that's the shift for most of our clients. When they come out of the course, they go, I thought about whether the clients liked it, but I'm now completely aware that I can tailor the day to meet those enjoyment peaks. Don't do a dangerous trail, or I'll cut that out completely because Jimmy can't ride with his feet in, and those ruts are definitely going to break his ankles, you know. So having that adaptability to meet the needs of the clients is a big learning. It's quite difficult to do. It takes a formula, which a lot of the course is about a formulaic approach to working these problems out. So at the end of the day, you've got quite a clear decision. This person does this, he can't go on this part of the trail, or he can't do this climb or something like that.
I was run leading for friends and for local TRF groups for years and years and years. I just fell into that role. I was the one that was good with the maps and the route planning, and so I'd fall into the land of run leader. And I had a couple of incidents where people fell off. You know, everyone falls off trail riding, right? But then you end up with somebody falling off. They're in a lot of pain. You later find out that they've broken both their tib and the fib, and you're somewhere that's got no phone signal. And even if you did have a phone signal, they're refusing to get into the air ambulance. So how do you get them out? And it was at that point I was like, I probably need to go and get myself some training here, because I had no idea what to do. I went on one of the early OGA branded courses with JP. Having done that, I then realised what I didn't realise, the risks that I was putting myself and my friends into. And after doing that course, there was a bit of a shift in my mind that I didn't want to ride with other people who weren't necessarily first aid qualified for a while, because I didn't want to be the one that fell off and be at the hands of someone who didn't know what to do.
It's interesting you say that. I always feel a little bit more comfortable when there is somebody with, you know, riding with Ollie. It's like you can kind of relax now, because if the shit does hit the fan, he knows what to do. He's capable.
Who's going to look after Ollie, though?
Well, nobody, because nobody really likes him.
I've been in the same situation. I was working for a company in the Sahara, and I was the riding medical support. And I kept thinking, if I get hurt, it's going to take ages to get the support truck here. It's definitely a consideration, isn't it?
There's a lot of skills on the guidance side of the course, aside from the first aid. We teach people and train people, and a lot of people will say, well, that's common sense. If it was, we wouldn't have to teach people it. Things like towing. Have you ever towed or been towed?
Yeah, and I've developed a strap which I've never actually released specifically for towing. It's that thing where you tie it onto the footrest in front, left to right, and then you wrap it round the foot peg of the person that's being towed. So if they get into trouble, they can just lift their foot off the strap.
Yep.
They're free.
You've got it.
I called it the endure rope.
We have had incidents that have led to us to include things like teaching towing. We've heard about things that have gone wrong where people have tried to tow themselves from each other instead of the bike, or from the bike to the person.
That story is quite interesting. I won't tell you who it is, but fundamentally, there's a rule with our guides. You don't leave anyone behind. If they've got to step out of the trip, they get dropped off at a place of safety, like a hotel or a cafe or something like that. Anyway, this guide, I won't say who he is, I won't say the organisation, but unfortunately he left because they were about a mile away from the fuel station. So he said, I'll go get fuel, stay here. 2 of you stay here. I'll be back in a minute. As he came back, he found one of the guys with the rope around his throat, tight, being strangled on the floor next to his bike. The guy who was towing had wrapped the rope around his shoulders, and then the guy at the back was holding it with the handlebars. They got downhill, got to a downhill section. The towee let go, and the tower rode off, and the rope flipped and got stuck in the back wheel and then cinched the rope around his throat. It was all right, but if that guide had been 10 minutes later, that would have been a very different story. Kelvin, are we allowed to tell that story, or is that too close?
Yeah, maybe. There's probably going to be a few too many people who identify that.
We've got loads of these stories, though. They're the best bits. I can tell you this, probably, because all I can say is good things about Austin. Austin's been part of the OGA since prior to COVID. I worked for Austin last year as an extra guide on his Motel Mondo trip, and he's fantastic. Although he took a little bit from the OGA, he was very, very on it anyway. I think that's that sort of school teacher approach, isn't it? But he said a really cool things that I really like, and I might start using it. He said, in his brief, he said, right, thanks for all coming, but I need to ask you all, are you a cunt? If you are a cunt, for the next 7 days, I'd like you to pretend that you're not. That's essential for the success of this venture, which was brilliant. Everyone's stunned, amazing. And I love it because it was straight to the point, setting the culture, setting the expectation. It's about camaraderie and it's about cracking on, and don't be an arsehole. But the best bit was right at the end of his trip, where they're all having the conversations and he's saying thank you to everybody. And his final thank you was, and I just want to thank you to the cunt in the group who managed to pretend they weren't a cunt for the whole trip. He brought it back, right back at the end. It was mega. It was really good.
So, TAMP tours, we could potentially run TAMP tours and get Kelvin or JP to come along and do it that way.
So you could just recruit any of the OGA guides, and all you'd have to do is contact us. We would release it to our hundreds of members and ask who's interested on this date. We would then work with you as an organisation to make sure that you had everything you needed to run it safely, including employment liability insurance, etc., employment insurance. And yeah, we'd make it happen. That could happen relatively quickly.
Can I just say to listeners that it's not going to happen. We're not really going to do that.
We're going to make it happen. The event that you were recently at in Cumbria, that was an event run by one organisation, Hags Bank, that was supported by their own level 1 guides. But there's also a lot of OGA independent guides from around the country who come up, and they'll do that. They'll go to different events and get involved just because they enjoy it. And they're the sort of people that you want as a guide, isn't it? People that are doing it because they enjoy it, not because it's about the money.
Possibly there's a gap that we just want to fill so that the listeners recognise that the people who are running the courses are competent in what we're doing. So, for example, where we've ridden on a bike, who we've got as part of the training team. That sort of information might help to sort of fill that gap. That's the only thing I was thinking.
So we've got on the first aid side of things, it's backed by Dr. Sarah Paltryman, who's our medical director. And she is a day job is an anaesthetist in the NHS, but she's worked for places like Doctors Without Borders and as a ski mountain medic. So she helps drive the first aid and medical side of things and make sure that we're all up to date and current. And we've got support from a guy called Damien Rawcliffe, who a lot of people will be aware of through Rally Moto. He was a rolling medic at Rally Moto. We've trained quite a few of the Rally Moto ambassadors over the last couple of years. We're seeing a lot of those guys coming through. My side is, since 2018, I've worked commercially as a motorcycle guide. A lot of my experience and my stories of dealing with customers in different groups, and that's single days up to weeks long, there's an absolute change in customer behaviour and your abilities over that period of time. And then working with the sidecar guys has given me a whole new look at customers, because from that we see not necessarily people who are coming into it as motorcyclists, but people who are there as passengers. When we're training guides to work with those guys, you have to give them a little bit of different knowledge.
My background as the technical advisor is I've got 35 years of expedition leadership. I currently work for multiple companies as either medical support or a professional guide for them. And I've guided in Himalayas, all through Africa, all of Northern America, most of Europe. We're not armchair specialists by any means. And that probably doesn't come across on here. Because we're all just chilling out. Our anecdotal stories will back up every element of our training. And we could keep you going for years, but we'd probably break a bit of confidentiality agreements if we told you all the true stories.
If somebody listening to this decides that guiding is something that they would like to get involved with, how do they get in touch with you? How do they register their interest for a course?
They need to go to www.theoga.info, and they'll see a tab there that has the upcoming courses. The next course we've got is going to be held in the Peak District in November, and there are only a couple of spaces left on that. We do get people who come on the course who have no interest in being a guide, which seems a little bit bizarre, but they do it because they want the skills themselves, for themselves and their friends. And since doing this course, I've gone from having several friends with broken bones to no friends with broken bones on my ride-outs.
That's really interesting that you've changed behaviour basically then, haven't you, effectively?
And we monitor all the other guides as well. So we get feedback when something goes wrong and we unpack it and use it to learn from.
One of the nice things about joining the OGA is if you need someone else to join your trip, if you need another guide for a day, a couple of days, whatever, you can reach out and say, I need anyone available for this trip. And you know that you've got someone who's already done a course to the same standard as you. So if you've got someone that you need, you can just pick someone up and be like, right, okay, cool. So I know that they've got that first aid. I know that they've got that character. I know that they've got that customer management. They can come and work for another organisation. And we do see that within the OGA.
Thanks a million for doing that, Kelvin and JP. If you want more information, get in touch with the Overland Guide Association. I'm hoping that's something that you guys will get on board with. Give the guys a shout, maybe get signed up and do a course. Also, a massive thanks to Simon Josie from the Real Riders podcast. Be sure to check that out. It's a fantastic podcast. Simon's an actual professional at doing this sort of thing. Highly recommended. Simon talks to motorcycling filmmakers and filmmaking motorcyclists, but either way, it's always incredibly good stuff. Be sure to check it out on your favourite podcasting platform. Right, that's it for this week. Back with me and Noel next week, wittering on from the bank of Ullswater about our trips to Norway and the Alps. If I don't see you before, I will see you at ABR. Noel's not going to be there this year. He has got a family wedding instead, which obviously he's utterly delighted about. Right, see you next time. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.